come to order. First, I'd like to recognize our Sergeant at Arms and thank them for what they do for us. We have Terry Barnhart. Where's Terry? Hey, Terry. Michael Cavness. Michael. Robert Cordell. Robert, thank you. John Enlow. John, and Mr. Dwight Green. Thank you for being with us today and taking care of us. We appreciate all of your efforts. I'd also like to recognize Senate pages for the week. From Wilmington, North Carolina, sponsored by Senator Michael Lee, we have Al Butler. Welcome, Al. From Raleigh, North Carolina, sponsored by Senator Bobby Hanig, we have Ava Custer. Ava, welcome. From Grover, North Carolina, sponsored by Senator Ted Alexander, we have Chesney Gibson. Welcome, Chesney. From Raleigh, North Carolina, sponsored by Senator Jay Chaudhry, we have Connor Lang. Welcome, Connor. And from Cary, North Carolina, one of our own, sponsored by Senator Krovick, we have Mackenzie Moran Bates. Welcome, Mackenzie. And finally, from Fayetteville, North Carolina, sponsored by Senator Val Applewhite, we have Keith Tillett II. Welcome, Keith. Hope you guys enjoy your week in the General Assembly. We're going to move some things around on the calendar to try to help some members with timings. So the first bill up will be Senate Bill 154, Avery County Occupancy Tax, sponsored by Senator Heiss. Senator Heiss, you're recognized to explain your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This bill deals with, we have a situation in Avery County right now where the municipalities in Avery County all have the authority to choose an occupancy tax. This fight's really gone on for about 60 years until the Pixie Inn finally sold, and now everybody's in agreement that this should be a countywide tax because some new owner has that hotel that's coming in, but we are trying to change it. But with that being said, I also have an amendment I'd like to send forward.
You may send forward your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this most of this is technical, dealing, we'll see later, with lodging facilities changing to accommodations and others to update the new language, but it also moves to the 2/3 previous standard for travel and tourism that's coming in for Avery County. So I ask for your support on the amendment, and I'm excited for the first time in 7 years we're actually moving an occupancy tax bill.
Members, of the amendment for Senate Bill 154 is before you. Any questions of Senator Heiss? Seeing none, we have a motion from Senator Todd Johnson to adopt the amendment to Senate Bill 154. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The amendment carries, and the bill as amendment is before you. Members, any questions on Senate Bill 154 as amended?
Mr. Chair.
Senator Johnson, you're recognized.
I have an amendment for 154. The amendment is S154 ASV XFR 38 version 3.
You may send forward your amendment. Members, I believe you all have a copy of that amendment, Senator Johnson's amendment to Senate Bill 154. Senator Johnson, you're recognized to explain your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All this does is add Indian Trail, North Carolina, Stallings, North Carolina, both municipalities in Union County, as well as Union County, to be able to hold a referendum for an occupancy tax, should they so choose.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Members, any questions on Senator Johnson's amendment? Seeing none, I have a motion from Senator Britt to adopt the Senator Johnson's amendment to Senate Bill 154. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it, and the bill is before you as amended twice. Members, any further discussions or questions on Senate Bill 154? Seeing none, I have a motion for Senator Lazzara for a, let me see what this is here, 154. Senator Lazzara moves for a favorable to the bill as amended, rolled into a proposed committee substitute with a favorable report to the committee substitute and an unfavorable report to the original bill with referral to rules. Is that right, Senator Lazzara? Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And the bill passes, and we'll move on to rules. Next up on the calendar, Senate Bill 162, Yancey County Occupancy Tax Increase. Senator Heiss, you are recognized to explain your bill.
I guess before I start again, Mr. Chairman, have an amendment.
Members, you have the amendment before you. Senator Heiss, you are recognized to explain your amendment.
Members, as I understand, this amendment is purely technical, dealing with the same conversations of what's changed under the tax law.
Thank you, Senator Heiss. Members, any questions or comments on the amendment? Seeing none, I have a motion from Senator Todd Johnson to approve the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Amendment passes, and Senate Bill 162 is before you as amended. Senator Heiss, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Currently, Yancey County is one of the counties that's limited to having a 3% occupancy tax. This would raise that to a 6% occupancy tax and leave the distribution as it currently exists.
Thank you, Senator Heiss. Members, any questions, comments on Senate Bill 162? Seeing none, I have a motion from Senator Alexander, and the motion is, that one's not amended, is it?
Yes.
It is, okay. Senator Alexander moves for favorable to the bill as amended, rolled into a proposed committee substitute with a favorable report to the committee substitute and an unfavorable report to the original bill with referral to rules. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Senate Bill 162 as amended passes. Thank you, Senator Heiss. We appreciate your time. Okay, thank you. Next up on the agenda, we will move to Senate Bill 120. I don't think Senator Corbin's here. We'll move that down on the calendar. I'll get someone, maybe Senator Johnson, to present that, or Senator Lazara. How about Senator Hanig? Senator Hanig is here. Senate Bill 132, Bertie County Occupancy Tax. Welcome, Senator Hanig. We appreciate you being here. Senator Hanig, you are recognized to explain your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 132 will allow the Bertie County Commissioners to develop a 6% occupancy tax if they should so choose. Everything else is boilerplate occupancy tax language. Stand for any questions.
Thank you, Senator Hanig. Members, are there any questions or comments on the bill? Seeing none, I have a motion from Senator Craven for a favorable report with a referral to rules. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Bill carries. Congratulations, Senator Hanig. Senate Bill 132 will move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Next up on the agenda, we will have Senate Bill 255, Iredell County Occupancy Tax Modifications. Senator Sawyer, you are recognized to explain your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee. Iredell County just didn't want to be left out of the party. Everybody else was having a tax party, so we wanted to make sure they're there. No, this is just establishing a tourism board for Iredell County. We are quickly becoming a hotbed for tourism in Lake Norman, and we have a lot of short-term rentals, and this is just giving the county the ability to collect the occupancy tax. I appreciate your support.
Thank you, Senator Sawyer. Members, any questions or comments on Senate Bill 255? Seeing none, I have a motion for Senator Danny Britt. It moves for a favorable report with referral to rules. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Bill carries and will be referred to rules. Senate Bill 255. Congratulations, Senator Sawyer.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Johnson.
If you'd like me to give 120 a shot, I'd be more than happy to try.
Stand up here, we'll get it. Next up on the agenda is Senate Bill 120, Swain County Occupancy Tax Rate Increase, and Senator Johnson will be the bill carrier for Senator Corbin. Senator Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll do the best I can with this. It looks like Senator Corbin is wanting to allow Swain County to authorize a second additional tax to allow up to 2% additional occupancy tax. Other than that, it looks pretty straightforward and simple, and maybe if staff has any more clarification.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Members, any questions or concerns on Senate Bill 120, Swain County Occupancy Tax Rate Increase? Seeing none, I have a motion from Senator Ford for a favorable report with referral to rules. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it, and Senate Bill 120 passes, moves on to rules. Just as a note for the committee, in speaking with the House, we are going to be moving forward with these occupancy tax bills of ours from the Senate. The House intends to do the same while we work on an agreement. But we also have a gentleman's agreement and a gentle lady's agreement that the House, if we have members that have been left out, need to be added over there. They intend to accommodate if we reach an agreement, and we intend to do the same thing. So if anyone feels they're left out there today, just know that we're working towards some consensus to be able to accommodate everyone. Thank you, Senator Johnson. Members, next up on the agenda is House Bill 488, Code Council Reorganization and Various Codes Amendments. And we are joined today by Representative Brody. Representative Brody, you are recognized to explain House Bill 488. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I believe in keeping with the tradition of the Senate on finance, we're just sticking with the finance sections.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. There are three of them. Basically, first out, Section 2 raises the permit exemption for, or allowing a permit to $40,000, and at the same time matches that with the increase in the general contractor licensing lower limit to $40,000. So they're the same. Section 10 is a $100 single lot fee for developments, or it gives an option, or at the developer's discretion, they can do an acreage fee. These are for development of lots. And lastly, Section 13 allows for local government to require developers to set aside up to, or to eventually set up aside up to 10% of the cost of a stormwater design and implementation program to be held by the HOA or property manager in the future.
Thank you,
Chairman,
Representative
I believe that's
Brody.
it.
I also failed to acknowledge your colleagues there. Representative Rodell, thank you for being here. Senator Jarvis, thank you for being here and your work on this bill. I believe we have an amendment on this bill. It should be before you members. Senator Lazzara, you are recognized to explain the amendment to House Bill 488.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, we have three essential changes. One is the effective date to January of 2026 in the first section, and where the residential code will become effective. And number two, the wind zone category, we changed it on sheathing inspections to 140 or greater. And then the number three in section 3 is the private rewording of a statement on private driveway. These were all agreed upon, and no opposition.
Thank you, Senator Lazzara. Members, any questions or comments on Senator Lazzara's amendment? Seeing none, I have a motion from Senator Todd Johnson to accept the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And House Bill 488 is now before you as amended. Members, any additional questions or comments for Representative Brody? Senator Woodard, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank Representative Brody and some of the stakeholders for the amendment as it relates to the energy code. I guess I did have a question. There was some conversation about if we paused the energy rules that there would be a 6-year delay before the new residential council could work on these. I assume this amendment fixes that and replaces that, so they would actually, I guess they've been mandated to start and get this done by January 1st of 2026. Am I reading that correct?
Representative Brody, you're recognized.
Yes, Senator, that is correct.
Okay.
Absolutely correct.
Follow up?
Senator Woodard, you're recognized.
Thank you. Another issue that came up was FEMA brick grants, and that somehow the delay would mean that we would lose funding for these brick grants, and that it would harm some of the things that we're trying to do. So could you, with this amendment or the general language in the bill, will this affect our ability to receive brick grants and put us at a disadvantage?
Representative Brody, you're recognized to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, nothing in the bill affects the ability to receive the brick grants or the full allocation, provided the Building Code Council adopts the 2024 residential code, which is completely in their power to do so at this point.
Okay. One more follow-up.
Senator Woodard, you're recognized for follow-up.
Thank you, Representative Brody. And as I actually read it, 488 actually puts us in a better position to receive these FEMA brick funds because of some of the steps that we're taking. But I guess my last question is, does not adopting the full energy standards, to your knowledge, have any way that it would impact the state losing grant money or insurance ratings in any way?
Representative Brody, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the provisions, and I have it, the BRIC Technical Evaluations Guidance, it requires that to get the full allocation for that section of the grant, that you have to pass the current, within 5 years, the current ICC, International Code Council, model code. And by the Building Code Council, if they do that, we'll be in full compliance with that. We'll get 100% of the grant points for that. So, but it doesn't say anything about any of the other codes. It strictly says the ICC residential or building code.
Thank you, Representative Brody. Thank you, Senator Woodard. Senator Lazzara, did you have a question earlier, sir?
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to allude to the same thing. It does not affect the BRIC grants. And actually, the wind zone portion of it actually enhances our capabilities to receive those grants.
Thank you, Senator Lazzara. Members, any other questions or comments on this bill? I will provide a couple of areas of color. I've received some correspondence on this issue. Some of it has been erroneous. I can't tell you if any of it was done so purposefully or people just parroting comments or what it is. We have seen some areas that needed additional clarity, but I am going to provide a couple of comments. This does not prohibit sprinklers from being in commercial buildings. It prohibits sprinklers from being required in residential buildings. You can still choose to build them if you want to pay for that, and you can do it. We saw a lot of other comments about insulation and things of that nature. This is the floor. This is the minimum standard of what these codes represent. So if you want to have additional insulation in your home, you can have it. If you want to have additional features in your home, you can have it. If you're a builder and you have a population that can afford something different, you can build it differently. It doesn't prohibit you from doing those things. Some of those comments have been fast and loose and very aggravating for us to deal with, and trying to wade through this early. I appreciate the patience everyone gave me and my fellow members, because I'm not a contractor, but I did read the bill, and I would encourage others to do that. It provides a lot of information. Any other questions or comments on this legislation? Seeing none, I have a motion from Senator Craven. Let me read the motion with my glasses. Senator Craven moves for favorable to the bill as amended, rolled into a proposed committee substitute, with a favorable report to the committee substitute and an unfavorable report to the original bill with a referral to rules. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Ayes have it, and Senate Bill 488 will be referred to rules. Members, I believe that exhausts.
Thank you, Mr.
No,
Chairman.
we got one more. Can you be done in 30 minutes? Okay. Finally, on the agenda, Senate Bill 99, Bond Referendum Transparency. Senator Johnson, you are recognized to explain your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Although I know a lot of y'all think I run a lot of really good bills, and I appreciate that, but this is probably my finest work. But seriously, this is a very important issue to me, having served in local government and seen bond referendums thrown on ballots without a lot of input for the people that are actually going to be paying the bills and voting. I wanted to make sure make sure that the taxpayers and citizens of North Carolina know exactly what they're getting into when there is a bond referendum. Mr. Chair, we do have an amendment on this bill.
Senator Johnson, is your amendment before the members?
It is before the members.
You're recognized to explain your amendment.
Okay. So with the amendment before you, which is pretty much the majority of the bill, what we're doing is we're adding a ballot question, wording at the beginning of a ballot question that simply says additional property taxes may be levied on the property, and that the amount sufficient to pay the principal and interest on these bonds if approved by this referendum. So we want to make sure that folks know that that you got to pay for these bonds as well. So it's not just a good idea, but just understand your taxes could go up. It also requires that the ballot gives voters estimates on the potential interest and property tax liability should the bond pass. You don't buy a car without finding out what the interest rate and what the payout's going to be in the payments. So we want to make sure people know what they're getting into. Requires a bond application be submitted to local government commission and includes disclosures that are in Section 3 of the bill, which includes the total amount of interest estimated result of proposed bond using the highest interest rate charged when looking at the immediately preceding years from the term equal to the maximum issue term of the proposed bond. Also, the unit's increase of property tax liability for each $100,000 of property tax value that's necessary to service the bond. And notice that the unit may issue without a vote additional general obligation debt in an amount up to 2/3 of the original amount of the proposed bond once the debt's retired. Section 5 is before a public hearing on the bond order. The finance officer must file a summary sheet that includes vital information that will educate the public and the media on the current financial state of the unit of local government, including any outstanding bonds held by the unit of local government, amount of debt that may be issued, the estimated cumulative interest, potential property tax liability increase. In addition, the bill also requires that the order approving the bond application, summary sheet, statement of disclosure, bond order be posted online on the websites of the LGC, the unit of local government, and the appropriate county board or board of elections for the local government. Lastly, once the bond vote is cast, much of the information about the bond referendum and ballot question is either hard to find or no longer exists. So Section 6A requires local government commission to maintain an online database that will compile all summary sheets, ballot questions, and certified statement of results. And then it requires that the potential tax rate be included in the ballot question for fire districts as well. Appreciate your support of the amendment and the bill.
Thank you, Senator Johnson, for that brief explanation. Members, any questions on the amendment? Seeing none, I have a motion from Senator Ted Alexander to adopt the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it, and Senate Bill 99 is before you as amended. Senator Johnson, you have any additional explanation on the bill?
No, sir. Appreciate your support.
Members, any questions or comments on Senate Bill 99? Senator Woodard, you're recognized.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Johnson, I appreciate the intent here, but it seems to me that we're putting some obstacles, and I served in local government as well, one of North Carolina's 4 AAA bond-rated cities by all 3 agencies. But as I read this bill, trying to understand the intent, it seems to me we're putting some obstacles in the way of local governments to issue GO debt. And of course, as you would know, that's the lowest interest rate you can get is by issuing GO debt. Can you help me work through some of those obstacles that I believe this is going to put for these local governments using GO?
Senator Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Woodard, thank you for the question. Ultimately, I think anytime we can inform the taxpayers of what they're actually going to be asked to pay for, that should be the ultimate goal. I wouldn't call it necessarily hurdles or obstructions in front of local government. We're just asking local governments to be upfront, and the majority of them are, but we're just asking be upfront with the taxpayers. Tell them what you're wanting to borrow money on. Tell them how much it's going to cost them, and ultimately make sure that they're fully educated as to what they're voting on. Too many times with the bond referendum, they're very generic, and folks are saying, well, yeah, I love parks. I mean, who doesn't love a park? But am I willing to pay more taxes for it? Maybe not. We just want to make sure that folks are educated and understand what they're paying for. That's kind of the goal, what we're trying to do.
Senator Woodard, you're recognized.
There are times, too, as you would know, a county commissioner, that local governments must take on debt. And when you phrase it like that, that sounds like a great talking point. But sometimes you have to issue that debt for things that are less sexy than a park. Be that water or a new police station or a fire station. I could go on, and you could think of those as well. And putting the questions like that sometimes when it's a necessary function of local government, oftentimes means that the local government's going to be forced to go to some other debt financing to provide that essential infrastructure or public safety service or whatever the necessity might be for local government. I guess that's the concern I'm having, is somebody might say, well, yeah, I don't want to pay taxes for a fire station, when it may be that the response time in that part of town has been, or that part of the county has been degraded because you don't have a fire station. So I guess that's going to be forcing local governments to some extent to go to higher interest debt in some cases. So I guess that's the concern I'm having with this.
Senator Johnson, you're recognized to respond.
Again, thank you, Senator Woodard. I understand the concern. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, with essential services, the burden would be on the town to make their case to the public and possibly provide more education to make their case as to why that debt needs to be or that bond needs to be approved. But at the same time, I think ultimately the taxpayers need to know what they're getting and what they're paying for.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Members, any further questions or comments? Senator Ford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, sometimes always the citizens need to know more, because if it's not borrowing money for essential services, as some people think that's the only thing you should borrow money for, or if the county has over and above what they need in the bank, you don't need to have a bond on the ballot, and therefore a larger, longer explanation is necessary, so the taxpayers will know if they're getting a bang for the buck or if it's something they actually want to support. So I love this bill, and I'm glad it's finally coming forward.
Thank you, Senator Ford. Senator Lazara, you're recognized.
And I just, probably to add to that, over the 15 years that I've served, most time municipalities, before they issue any public debt, it's always discussed and very transparent before it ever comes to fruition. So I don't think this will deter any of that, because it happened somewhat already. I think this will further clarify and add transparency. I don't see it as an obstacle to local government, because most folks will know and either approve or disapprove of what your potential debt obligation is going to be.
Thank you, Senator Lazara. Members, any further questions? Any comments? Any members of the public here to speak on this bill? Seeing none, we have a motion from Senator Lazara. Senator Lazara moves for a favorable to the bill as amended, rolled into a proposed committee substitute with a favorable report to the committee substitute and an unfavorable report to the original bill with referral to rules. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Bill carries. Members, if you could stick with me just one moment. I missed some public comment on a bill we've already voted on, Senate Bill 488, and I want to give these individuals a chance to speak if they'd like to. First, Mr. David Crawford with AIA of North Carolina. Is Mr. Crawford still here?
Thank you.
Mr. Crawford,
Thank you, Mr.
you're
Chairman.
recognized.
I appreciate it. I'm Dave Crawford. I'm the Executive Vice President for the American Institute of Architects here in North Carolina. You all received in your office the AIA's position on House Bill 488 already. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Coalition for Current Safety Codes. That includes the AIA, International Code Council, National Electrical Manufacturers Association, the National Fire Protection Association, the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers, and UL Solutions. Now, I know the committee is here for finance-related issues only, so I'll forego the number of safety concerns that we have for 488. But I do want to address a few things related to finance. One, Senator Woodard, you brought up the issue of the BRIC grants. One of the things we have learned is the 2022 BRIC grants were downgraded here in North Carolina because of the state of our codes right now. And if we continue on that path for another couple of years, there is the high likelihood that we'll lose access to some of those BRIC grants. In 21, we had $50 million worth of BRIC grants that went to the communities of Duck, Fairbluff, Greenville, Siler City, Gastonia, Fayetteville, Hickory, Lumberton, and Salisbury. The other issue here is having to do with storm-ravaged communities and whether or not that they can get federal assistance after the storms. FEMA has said, and I quote, federal agencies are being asked to review programs and support new construction or substantial rehabilitation of homes and other buildings through grants, loans, funding, financing, or technical assistance. Ultimately, receiving federal assistance on projects that use older codes will not be allowed. So that's something we need to consider when we're talking about adopting the new code. So thank you very much. I'd like to continue to work on this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford. Next up, we have Natalie McDonald. Is Natalie here with NCBCC? Ms. McDonald, welcome.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members. My name is Natalie McDonald. I'm the mechanical engineer seat on the North Carolina Building Code Council. So want to echo some of my colleague here concerns with the BRIC funding as well. So also wanted to bring some of the same points he just made, but wanted to bring forth some of direct feedback we've gotten from FEMA, specifically that the misalignment with our state's adoption code and the ICC updates resulted in North Carolina sub-applicants who have adopted the state's code to receive 10 out of the 20 possible points for the statewide building code criteria during the 2022 cycle, and this has affected our total score for FEMA funding and will affect in the future likely access to grant funding in years to come. We've also already proposed, or North Carolina has applied for $141 million of grants this year, but we've already lost $650,000 worth because of our lack of being able to update codes in the recent years. Additionally, though, want to bring up the cost impacts of splitting the code council into residential and commercial codes. So this is going to have an additional burden on the Department of Insurance and the staff that it takes to help us with these codes, specifically $500,000 per year. And then between now and when the code is actually adopted through, that could cost up to $3 million for out of the state budget. So that's another financial thing to consider. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. The chair will point out it will only cost money if appropriated, and I don't think that's going to be an issue. I do want to touch on two things that were brought up. And that was about BRIC and grants in the past, and this is another thing I've gotten emails on. That has nothing to do with this bill. That's already occurred. That's in the past. That wasn't caused by this bill. That's not even law yet. I don't know why we continue to bring that up when this bill didn't cause it. We should keep our comments in committee to the bill. Is anyone else that has signed up back there, Dwight? I don't have anyone else on the list. I think the other gentleman has waived his right. All right, members, thank you for your time. Committee is adjourned. All right, members, thank you for your time. Committee is adjourned. All right, members, thank you for your time. Committee is adjourned. All right, members, thank you for your time. Committee is adjourned. All right.